So friends, last week I released a video onto the SQL portfolio project onto the basic data exploration task. So this video is a continuation from the previous video. This is the part 2 of the same video. So if you haven't checked out that video, you can check out from this particular link which is popping out right now onto your screen. The part 1 of the video, we got an overview of the data set and also we solved some problems onto the same data set. Part 2 will consist of some of the interesting questions onto some of the advanced level concepts. Without wasting much time, let us quickly move on to the screen and let us start solving the next problems. Before that, don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Let's move to the problems. Friends, let us move to the next problem, and you can see here the next problem is for each customer how many delivered roles had at least one change and how many had no changes. So let's say if there are 10 roles which were successfully delivered, for among all of those 10 roles how many had some changes. By changes they mean that you can see into this customer orders table there are some not include items and extra items included. So these are the changes from the predefined, you can say, template of the role preparation. So if I want to add something extra or if I want to not include something, so I can just mark that into the application and that particular data will get captured into both of these columns, the respective data. Friends, before solving this particular problem, as I mentioned earlier, like into this particular portfolio project we will be dealing with the data cleaning part also. We will be handling all of these null values, these NaN values, all of these dirty data which is present to our data set, and we will be first of all handling all of these and then processing with solving the next problems. The earlier problem which I solved, they did not require to do much more the data cleaning part, but as we are entering deep into the concepts and everything, so we need to have a proper data with us. So let us clean this particular data set which is present here. So basically most of our data set which is present here are kind of okay, except for the very first two these data sets, because you can see here some null values, NaN values, and some of the vacant spaces, these are present. So we need to replace all of these values, we need to remove all of these values, or rather removing, we need to substitute something in place of all of these values so that it is very much easy for us whenever we are doing the coding part. Now friends, to do this, let us create a temporary table with the help of both of these tables, and into that table we will be substituting these null values and the NaN values with 0, so that each of the irrespective or the data points which we don't require, those are substituted with 0, and it is very much easy for us to do the coding onto the later part of the video. So to create the temporary table, and this particular temporary table which we are creating for customer orders and driver order, we will be using afterwards. So we won't be using the customer order table, we will be using the clean data. After processing all of these dirty data, we have clean data, and then we will be putting the clean data for customer orders into a temporary table, and later on we will be using the temporary table for each part of the code. Friends, let us see how to create the temporary table. So to create the temporary table for customers order, I will write here with, and here we need to mention the temporary table which we are creating for customers order. So we can just mention any name. I'll just mention here temporary customer orders. We'll give a bracket, and inside this bracket we need to mention what are columns needs to be mentioned into this particular temporary table which we are creating. So friends, the column, they are exactly the same. We don't want to make any changes into the number of columns or the name of the columns. We just want to give the exactly the same columns which is present into the original table. After this, we need to write our query for generating the temporary table into this particular bracket. So we'll write here select and instead of not include items, extra included items, there need to be not any changes into all of these other columns. We need to present the changes only in these two columns, not include items and extra included items, extra item included. So we will just write this particular column as it is: customer id comma role id comma. After this we need to make changes to the not include items and extra included items. So what changes we need to make here? So all of these null values you can see here, all of these empty spaces you can see here, all of these NaN values you can see here. Let us just simply replace all of these values with 0, and that would serve our purpose. That will help us into the writing the query into the later part of the video, and it also makes sense if you would think so. I'll just mention here case when include items is null or items is equal to the empty space 0, else it will remain as it is. So whatever value is present, it will remain as it is, and this as new not include items. I'll just write here so this has been done for the not included items. Let us do for the next column, which is the extra items included. I'll just copy the same thing, I'll paste it here. We have null, we have the empty spaces included. In addition to this, we have a NaN value also. So we'll just write here or not include items is equal to NaN. That's all is required. This is extra items included. So we'll change the column name here, items included. I'll just copy this and paste it into the new column which we are creating, and at the very last let us have the order underscore date column from what's the table name. The table name is customer orders, so we'll copy the table name from here. That's all is required. Let us do a simple select star from this. Let us execute the query here. Okay, we need to mention here as. So friends, we'll just run this particular query. We are getting an error, and the error says conversion failed when converting the varchar value 2,6 to data type int. And this is happening because if you will closely look into both of these tables, you can see comma separated values 2,6, and this is a varchar data type, and because we are entering 0 into an integer form, it is not able to convert this particular varchar value to an integer value. So somehow we need to rectify this. Let us see how to do this. So instead of simply writing 0 as an integer form, let us convert this 0 into a string form by adding simple string or quotes here, and that would do the thing for us. We need to substitute here the extra included items. I just copy pasted exactly the same value as before, so I need to put extra included items everywhere into this particular line. Okay, that's great. Let us execute the query again here. Okay, now this serves our purpose and we are getting a desired result what we wanted. We've done the changes into the customer orders table. Let us do some changes into the driver orders table, because here also you can see some null values present here, NaN values which are present here. So we need to do here changes for this cancellation column, because the pickup time, distance, duration, they are following a kind of relation that, okay, if a order was not picked up, it is definitely no distance is covered, and so the duration is also null. So that makes a sense. So let us just simply do changes into the cancellation column, and if required later on, we will be processing this data again and again, so or making changes again with this particular code. So I would simply copy this particular table here, and this is the driver order table. I'll just mention here driver order. We'll mention the column name here, and we need to mention the code which we need to write. So I'll just mention here select order ID comma driver ID comma pickup comma distance comma duration, and at the very last we'll be making changes to cancellation. So I'll just write here case when cancellation is equal to, or I'll just write here in. So both of these, either the order was cancelled by the driver or the order was cancelled by the customer, we need to mention both of these. So if the order is cancelled, let us put the value as 0, and whenever the order is not cancelled, let us put the value as 1. And I'm just writing this into a code. I'll end as new cancellation, and that's all. So from driver order table. At the last, I'll just write here select star from temporary driver order, and that's all is required. We'll just execute the code here. So you can see here all of those cancelled orders, they have been marked as 0. All of those orders which were not cancelled, they are marked as 1. So these are some basic changes, basic data cleaning thing which we have done. A lot more to be done into the video ahead, the data cleaning part, and that will all depend on the type of the problem we will be going to solve. So this particular problem could have been also solved without doing all of these things, but I needed to give you a visibility on how data cleaning works. So you can see real data is kind of like this, having a lot of null values, NaN values, a lot of dirty data are present. So we need to apply certain techniques to clean this particular data for proper processing. So let us solve this particular problem. So for each customer, how many delivered roles had at least one change and how many had no changes? So friends, so first of all, we are only concerned with the delivered roles. So let us get the details of the roles which were delivered. So, and that only we can get through this particular table which we have created right now. So I'll just execute the code here. So you can see here for orders, if they are delivered, they are not cancelled. So I will just write here select star from this temporary driver order where new cancellation is not equal to 0. So I want to get all of those orders which have not been cancelled and have been successfully delivered. Okay, so we need to write here new cancellation as well. Once again, that's it, we are getting all of those orders which were successfully delivered. Now we have got the successfully delivered orders, but we want to know for each customer how many delivered roles had at least one change and how many had no changes. So out of all of these roles which were delivered, we want to know, or all of these orders which were delivered, we want to know into how many orders they had at least one change and how many orders had no changes. We need to get this particular data here. So to get this particular data, we need to join the temporary customer order details, or we can do this simply. So I'll just mention here select order ID, and I'll just mention here select star from, I'll be using the temporary customer orders where order ID in. So I'll just mention this. Okay, so we are using two temporary tables here, so I'll just remove this with, put a comma and run the query. So the tables, they have been used, so we are getting the details of all the orders which were successfully delivered. Now into this we want to know how many orders that had any changes in them, or how many orders that did not had any changes in them. So by changes, what do we mean? By changes, we mean that either any extra items were included or any items they were removed from the role. So we need to take into account both of these factors here. So friends, to calculate any changes into an order, we need to take into account whether an items were included or whether the extra items were put into the role. So we need to take into account both of these factors. Let us see how to do this. So case when not include items is equal to 0, and also extra items included is equal to 0. So both, if both are 0, what does 0 means? What do we have done in by when we are creating the temporary table, like for what purpose this 0 should be taken place? So all of those null values, NaN values, we had substituted for 0, and that clearly means that for those roles, for those orders, there has been no changes that has been done into those orders or the roles which were prepared for those orders. So friends, we can just simply say that case when not included items is equal to 0 and extra included items is equal to 0. So we need to take into account both of these factors. So then what? So then we can conclude that it is no change. Else for any other case there has been a change which is made, I'll just end this as change or no change. That's it. Let us execute the query after this. This should be into the codes as well, because that is not an integer value present there. Let's rerun the code again. So for this particular case, the data type into the both these columns are a varchar data type, a string data type, and our purpose is served. Into some of the other problems, we need to change it to integer value. So we will try to see how we can do this. But right now it is all clear. We are having the varchar data type and it is serving our purpose. So as you can see here, we'll just verify for few cases. So 0 0 0 0. So all of these are no changes. 0 0. So you can see here 4 is coming, so an item might have been not included, so we are getting a change here. So all of these are present. Now I think we are close to solving this particular problem. We want to know for each customer how many delivered roles had at least one change and how many had no changes. So friends, we need to do here we'll need to mention this into a subquery. Now we are very much close of solving this particular problem. So I'll just write here select, and for each customer we want to know into how many roles, or let's say into how many orders they were having no change or change. So this should be change underscore no change, and we would need to count the number of orders here. So we'll be counting here number of orders, count of order ID from this, and at the later stage we need to group by also. So group by on the basis of the first two columns, customer ID and no change column. So column name is quite tricky to pronounce, but yeah, I'll just mention this here. That's all is required. I'll just execute the query now. So you can see here for customer ID 103 into 3 orders there has been made a change. For customer ID 104 into 2 orders there has been made a change. For customer ID 105 into 1 order there has been made a change. So this is how we are getting this information, and this is exactly what into the problem it was asked. So for each customer we wanted how many delivered roles, so successfully delivered roles. So as you could see, there were some roles there, those were cancelled, so we need not to take into account all of those roles. So we need to only take into account the delivered roles. So you could see here delivered roles had at least one change and how many had no changes. So we are getting this answer here. So at least one change. I would just simply rename this column as at least one change. Let us run the query here. It is required. So friends, this is how we are solving this particular problem. So you can see here for customer ID 104 into 2 orders the customer has made and some changes, while the same customer into one of the orders there has been no changes which is to be made. So friends, this is how we have solved this particular problem. So this was a bit of complex, we required to do some bit of data cleaning thing here. So but we finally successfully solved this particular complex problem. Let us move to the next problem. Next problem, it says how many roles were delivered that had both exclusions and extras. So into this particular problem we need to take into account all of those delivered roles that had both. So into some of the roles the customer they want some extra items, but they do not want to include any items or exclude any items. Into some of the cases the customer they just want to exclude certain items, they don't want to include some extra items into the role. But into this particular case we need to calculate how many roles, just the number of the roles which were delivered had both the exclusions and the extras. Like the customer they want to also include something into the role and also exclude something from the role. So we need to take into account both of these factors. I think it is pretty much similar to the previous problem we have solved. So I would simply copy the code from here. We have used temporary table concept. If you want to know what are the temporary tables and you want to learn that, I have made a detailed video onto the temporary table, so you can go and check out that particular video also. So friends, here let us remove this thing. Let's run the query. Let us see what's the output. To the previous problem, as you could see, if either the not included items or the extra included items, either there was zero means that no changes has been done, like the customer does not want to have any changes. So if both of them were 0, we gave no change, like the both. But into this case we need to change some logics here, because we need to include both exclusions and extra, so both need to take into account. So here as you could see, order ID is 4, we have not included any extra items but have excluded any item, so it is mentioned as change. Only when both of these are not 0, we need to mark this as change. So instead of equal to, we need to mention here as not equal to. Just the opposite of the previous problem, we need to mention here, and this should be marked as a change. And else for all of the other cases, if let's say item has been excluded and not included, they need to be marked as no change. Or I'll just change the wordings here, that would make pretty much clear. So both included, excluded, and this would be either one included or excluded. That's it is required. Let us execute this particular query here. We'll just verify few of the rows, either we are getting the correct data or no or not. Here for most or almost every other data point, we are having a case where either one of the item is included or excluded, like both is not happening. It is only happening to one of the order, which you could see here. Like the items have been included also and the items have been excluded also from the role. So this is the data which we wanted. Let us simply get the count of the number of orders where both have been taken place. So I'll just put this into a subquery here. Though the data set is here is quite small in nature, but into the real scenario the data set would be quite large. So this is just for practice purpose to give you a proper understanding on what type of problem you can expect and how to solve these particular problems. So the small data set won't matter, the concepts you are taking from this particular video, that will matter a lot. So I'll just mention here change, no change, comma, count of change, no change, because in each of the row there is information for a particular role. So as you can see here in order id 3 there are two roles, role id 1 and role id 2. So for each of the row which is present into this particular data set has information about a role, and the answer which we wanted is how many roles were delivered that had both exclusions and extras. So that is why we can simply do a group by like this, solve this particular problem. So at the very last I'll just group by only the basis change, no change, that's it is required. Let us execute the query here. So you could see here only one of the role onto one of the order id there is a role in which both items were included and the items were excluded, while for 11 orders, like for the rest of the other orders, either one took place. So either the item were included or the item were excluded or both were not done. So we are capturing all of these cases, but we have solved this particular problem with the help of the previous query. Let us move to the next problem. Let us quickly jump over. So the problem says what was the total number of rolls ordered for each hour of the day. This is pretty much interesting to solve. I love this kind of problems. On to the timestamp. So I'll just execute the query here. We need to focus just onto the total number of roles which were ordered, not onto the roles which are successfully delivered. So we just need to focus onto this particular table, which is the customer orders table. So friends, let us see how to do this, and we want to know what is the total number of roles ordered for each hour of the day. Okay, that is great. So what do we mean by each hour of the day? So a day contains 24 hours. So we could just simply divide this particular column you can see here. We can just simply mark like whether the order which were taken place for this particular order id. So you can see order date is mentioned there and a timestamp is also mentioned here. So you could simply capture the hour value from here and you can just put that into a bracket of, let's say, if this order is placed at 18:05, so you can place into a bracket of 18 to 19 hours. Similarly, this particular order can be placed into 21 to 22 hours bracket. So we need to place all of these order into a similar bracket. Similarly, this particular order can be placed into a 11 to 12 o'clock bracket. So we need to place all of these orders, all of these rows into a bracket kind of thing, and later on we'll just group by, and that would give the answer of the total number of roles which were delivered into each hour of the day. So we'll be getting this particular information. Let us see how to solve this particular problem. So we need not to concern of the date. So either the order can be placed into any date. We are not concerned with the date part, we are just concerned with the hour part, and this is a very important data point to want to know, like which is the part of the day in which my sales are the highest and which part of the day my sales are becoming the lowest. This will give a better indication on our business, like when our customers, they are pretty much excited to buy more items or quite active on our website, and when our customers are not so much active on our website. So we can just simply, let's say, run offers at that time so that the customers, they can become active and they can buy different products onto our website. So this is just a general idea which I have given, but various companies use similar data points to study different kind of predictions and make different kind of predictions, probabilistic predictions into the future. Let us solve this particular problem. First of all, we'll gather the R value from this particular order date. So to gather the R value, I'll be using this particular function here. So I'll just write here select star from, I'll just get the table name from here, customer orders, paste this. Let us execute this code. So we are getting our data here, and from all of these order date we want to capture the date R value. So I'll just use this function which is the date part, and what do I want to capture? I want to capture the R value from all of these dates. So I'll just mention here order date, and I'll mention this R. That's all. Let us execute the code from here. Here we are getting the R value. Let's quickly verify few of them values. So we are getting 1323, so this is pretty much correct. 2103, 21, we are getting 21. So this is how we are getting the R value from all of these order date value. Now if we need to put this into a bracket, we need to, like what I said earlier, so this particular date, it lies into a bracket of 18 to 19 hours. Similarly, this particular let's say timestamp, it lies into a value of 19 to 20 hours. So we need to put all of these timestamp value into a particular range, a particular bucket, so that it gives a better visibility on the total number of roles which were ordered for each hour of the day. So we can divide the total day into 24 hours like this. So how to do this? So we can simply copy the same thing from here, paste it, do a +1, and let us change this column name to R1. We'll execute the code. As you can see, we are getting value. Also, let us change the data type of this as varchar. Also of this as varchar. Let us execute the query once again. That all is required, and at the very last I'll use the concat function to concatenate this with this. And that's all, and I'll just rename this as the R's bucket. Finally, I'll execute the code here, and you can see I've put all of these timestamp value into a bucket kind of thing, what I've discussed earlier. All of these timestamp I have successfully put into the R's bucket, and from this particular R's bucket, let us simply count the number of roles which were ordered into a particular hour of a day. So I'll just put this into a subquery here, and this as a, I'll group by on the basis of the hours bucket only, because we want to know how many orders which were placed into a certain hour. So that we want an hours bucket, and will count. So what do we want to count? So we want to get the details of the total number of roles which were placed. So we'll just simply count the hours bucket only, because if we wanted to know how many orders were placed, we would be counting count of distinct order ID, but instead they simply want the number of roles which were placed. So this will serve our purpose. Also, I'll just simply execute the code. So you can see here we are getting a details on the total number of roles which were ordered into the parts of the day. So you could see here 13 to 14 hours, that is 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 roles have been placed, and 6 to 7 into the evening, 3 roles have been placed. Though this is a very small data, as I'm saying this continuously into this video, so we are getting a little data points, but if this was a real case scenario, you will be getting a lot and huge data points for all of these pretty much startups which we are seeing. solving this particular problem. So they have lot of data, lot of orders coming out into all of these hours. So friends, this is how we have solved this particular problem. Let's move to the next problem. And the problem says, and it is on to a similar lines, what was the number of orders for each day of the week. So friends, into the previous problem we have seen how many orders which were placed into a certain part of the day, into certain hour of the day. Into this particular problem we want to know how many orders which were placed for each day of the week. And this is also pretty much interesting problem to solve, isn't it? Because let's say on Monday, if I'm having a lot and huge amount of sales, that is a clear indication that something is happening on Monday, or something is going good on Mondays, and that is why the sales are increasing onto that particular date, irrespective of like any seasonal off or any holidays. So we can implement the same thing which we are doing on Mondays onto the other days, and our sales would increase. So we want to know how many orders which were placed for each day of the week. So this is the data we want. So this also is pretty much interesting to solve. Let's see how to do this. So we are having the customer orders data set here, and we'll be using the order underscore date column. Into the previous case we have got the R value. Into this case we want to know what was the day of the week for this particular date on which order was placed, and we'll be using the same concept, and we'll be grouping by on the basis of the day of week. So either it would be a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, any day of the week. We just want to get the data into the corresponding next column, like what was the day of the week for this particular date. Let us do this. So we'll be using a different function this time, and that is date name, and we want to get the day of the week. So we'll be using DW here, and from which date do we want? So we want it from the order date. Let us rename this as day of week. We will execute the code from here. So you can see here I'm getting all the day of the weeks from here. We'll just put this into a subquery now, because we want to know how many roles or number of orders which was placed for each day of the week. Into the previous case we wanted to know total number of roles which were ordered. Into this case we want to know number of orders. So this is the change which I was discussing to the previous problem, which we needed to do if this was into the total number of orders which were placed. So I'll just mention here select day of week comma count of, here I'll just write a distinct of order ID from this, and at the last will be grouping by onto the basis of day of week. And that's all is required. We'll just execute the code from here. So you can see onto the Friday night 5 orders were placed, and onto the Monday 2 orders were placed. Saturday, Sunday we are having less number of orders. What is this? But this is a kind of dummy data. So but learning the concept is a pretty much major part of this particular video. So your focus should be on learning the concept, how I'm trying to solve such complex level of problems. You should focus on that part rather the data points which are being displayed here. These are some of the dummy data obviously. So friends, this is how we have solved the problem of the total number of orders for each day of the week, and onto the Friday we are getting the highest number of orders. Let us move to the next problem. So as I had discussed earlier, we will be solving problems into 4 categories. Number 1 was role metric, number 2 driver and customer experience, ingredient optimization, pricing, and the ratings. So the role metric part is now over. We have solved around 10 problems into this particular part. Let us move to the driver and the customer experience part here, and let us solve some of the problems, some of the interesting problem here also. So let us move to the very first problem into the driver and the customer experience part, and the problem says what was the average time in minutes it took for each driver to arrive at Faaso's headquarters to pick the order. So we want to know what is the average time in minutes it took for each driver to arrive at the Faaso's headquarters to pick up the order. Now how do we know like what is the average time it was taken place? So friends, I'll just quickly explain explain how do we get to know about this thing. So you can see here we are having the customer order details and the driver order details. So if we want to know what is the average time it took for the driver to reach the Faaso's headquarters to collect the order, we need to have two things here. Please focus here. So first of the thing is, when the customer he places or she places the order into the application, and when the driver is picking up the order, so the difference between both of these times will give us the average time it takes for the drivers to reach the destination or the Faaso's headquarters to pick the order. And we are having both of these time which is mentioned here. As you can see, I am having the order date and the pickup time here which is mentioned. This order date is the date which I was discussing, or the timestamp which I was discussing, where the date is mentioned or the timestamp is mentioned when the order is being placed, and this is the particular timestamp of when the driver is picking up the order from the Faaso's headquarters. So we want to get the difference between both of these timestamps here which is present, and that would serve our purpose for this particular case. So friends, let's see how to do this. So before solving this particular problem, we should definitely join both of these tables here onto the basis of the order ID. So I'll just mention here a dot order ID comma a dot customer ID comma a dot role ID. So I'm getting all of these columns from the very first table, the customer orders table, not include items, a dot extra included comma a dot order date. Similarly, we'll be getting some of the columns from the second table. Just mention here a b dot driver ID comma b dot pickup time comma b dot distance, b dot duration comma b dot cancellation from the very first table, and which was the customer orders table. I'll just copy this. We'll do a inner join. Obviously we'll do a inner join onto which table. So the second table is the driver underscore order table. So I'll just copy this and paste this b on a dot order ID is equal to b dot order ID. Let us execute the query here. So you can see both of these tables have been joined. Now we are only concerned with the, let's say, the orders which were picked up. As you can see here, for these particular rows there are some null values which is present, and we need to remove this because these were the orders which were not picked up. So there is no meaning of calculating the average time for these orders. So I would simply do a b where b dot pickup underscore time is not null. Let us re-execute this particular query here. Those values have been removed and we are getting some of the correct values here. We want to know what is the average time in minutes it took for each driver to reach it. So now it is pretty much clear. We need to calculate the difference between both of these dates, the order date and the pickup time, in terms of minutes here. Extra column that would represent the difference in terms of minutes for both of these columns, the order date, the time on which the order was taken place onto the application, and the time on which the order was picked up. So we need to get the difference between both of these timestamps. So let us do this. So I'll be using this particular function which is the date diff, and onto what basis do we need to calculate the difference? So we'll be calculating the difference on the basis of the minutes. As you can see, we need to calculate on the basis of the minute, the average time in minutes, and we need to provide here the two dates on which we need to calculate the time difference. So the first date is the first timestamp should be the time on which the order was put into the application, or order was ordered into the application, and the second timestamp which we need to put here is the pickup time from the restaurant, and we need to get the difference between both of these timestamps. So we'll just execute this particular code here. You can see I'm getting all of these into the difference in terms of minutes between both of these timestamp. I'm getting into this particular diff column, as you could see, but we need to calculate the average time it takes for each of the drivers. So we need to get this information. So to get this information, let us do one thing. Let us put this into a subquery, and I'll get here, I want to get for each of the drivers. So I'll get the, first of all, I'll get the driver ID from here. Then I want to get the one more thing. As you can see here, for order ID S3, we are having two rows for the same order. So obviously it would take the same amount of time when the customer is placing the order and the driver is reaching to the Faaso's headquarters to pick the order. So it does not make sense to have two rows for just the same order. So solving this particular problem, it does not make sense. Otherwise our count would be doubled up, tripled up, because let's say in an order there are 5 rows that are being placed. So in that case, if I am using a group by and summing over, so 5 number of times that would take into account. So we don't want to do this. So let us have a single row for just a single order. And also you could verify this thing is order ID 3, there were 2 rows which were placed. So you could see here the difference is 21, and it also makes sense because in Swiggy or Zomato, let's say, or any other application, we are placing an order, we are just putting n number of items into the order. So at a time we are putting the order, and at a time only the Zomato guy, he goes and picks the order from the restaurant. So it happens at a particular timestamp only. It will not happen like if you're placing 3-4 orders into a same order ID and that would picked up at different timestamp. It does not happen like that way. So it is better to have one row for a single order ID. So I'll just do this, and to get this particular thing, I'll be ranking onto the basis of the order ID. So I'll just do here select star comma, I'll provide a row number. I'll do it here. You can check out my video why I'm using a row number and not using a rank and a dense rank. You can comment down your answer into the comment box of this video. Why I have used here a row number and not I'm using a rank or a dense rank function. And to know why I've used this, you can check out my advanced SQL playlist. I've made a detailed video onto the rank, dense rank and the row number concept. So I'll be using the row number over, I'll be partitioning by onto the basis of which thing. So I'll be partitioning by onto the basis of the order ID, obviously order by onto the basis of, let's say, diff, and that's all is required. I'll put this as rank. From this, that's all. Let us execute the query. So you can see we are giving the rank value, and after this we'll just filter out a row for a single order, and that is what we are concerned of. So I'll just write here select star from this, where rank is equal to 1. I'll just execute the code from here. So we are getting only a single row for a single order, and that is what we required. I'll again put this into a subquery, and right now is what I needed to do is calculate the average time it takes. So I'll just mention here select driver ID comma sum of the difference, and also count of the number of orders placed on the driver ID from this and at the very last I'll be grouping by onto the basis of the driver ID, because I want the data for each of the driver ID. So I'll just simply execute the code from here. So you can see here driver ID 1, 2 and 3. I'm getting the total time it took and the count, total number of orders they had been placed. Now why I have done this is, average. So average is the sum over the total count. So if let's say there were 5 students in a class and the marks were, let's say 3 only, and the marks they have got was something like, out of 10 the marks was 7, 8 and 6. So what is the average marks of the class? So we would calculate the average marks, something like 7 plus 8 plus 6. This would give the sum, and the sum would be 21. And the number of students, so this is the count. So the same logic I've applied here, and the average marks would be calculated as sum by count. That would be 7. So 7 was the average marks of this class. So I just did this to simply explain what was the average concept. I'll be using the same thing here. Let us divide sum by count, execute the query. So you can see we are getting the value. So this is the average time it is taking for the drivers to reach the Faaso's headquarters after the order has been placed to pick the order. So this is also clear indication to various things. This can be used into a lot of many different ways. The drivers were taking a greater time than the average time it is taking for almost all the drivers. They are taking a larger amount of time, so some actions can be taken against the drivers, or we will be digging deep into knowing the reasons why the driver they are taking such a long amount of time than respect to the other drivers. So this data point can help into that way.